Hello, I'm Shannon Vittoria, Senior Research Associate for American Painting and Sculpture in the American Wing, and I'm privileged to be speaking to you today as a guest in the ancestral homelands of the Lenape people. And I respectfully acknowledge the Met's location in Lenape-Hoking, the homeland of the Lenape diaspora, and historically a gathering and trading place for many diverse Native peoples who continue to live and work on the island. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's program, Artists on Artworks, part of a long standing series here at the Met in which artists are invited to share their unique perspectives on artworks in both the permanent collection and in temporary exhibitions. This program is hosted in conjunction with the special exhibition Jules Tavernier and the Elem Pomo, co-curated by myself and my colleague Elizabeth Kornhauser. This exhibition examines the intercultural exchange between the French-born and trained artist Jules Tavernier and the indigenous Pomo community of Elem, whose homelands are located on the southeastern shore of Clear Lake, approximately 100 miles north of San Francisco in California. The exhibition was inspired by and is centered around Tavernier's large-scale masterwork, Dance in a Subterranean Roundhouse at Clear Lake, California, which he completed in his San Francisco studio in 1878. In addition to depicting the ceremonial regalia of both the male and female dancers, Tavernier included two woven baskets in the foreground of his painting. At left, a twined carrying basket, and at center, a coiled basket tray. The present exhibition includes more than 30 coiled and twined baskets made by Pomo weavers in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries, highlighting a wide variety of Pomo weaving techniques, as well as the deep ethnobotanical knowledge of their makers. These baskets celebrate Pomo innovation and resiliency, both in the past and in the present day. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our special guests, Sherrie Smith-Ferri and Clint McKay, who are joining us today from Northern California to discuss at greater length many of the baskets and weavers featured in this exhibition. Basket art historian Sherrie Smith-Ferri, PhD, is a member of Sonoma County's Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and also descends from the Bodega Miwok people. Sherrie recently retired from a 30-year career as executive director and curator of Ukiah's Grace Hudson Museum. She has studied and written extensively about Pomo basketry and Pomo peoples' history, and has participated in several exhibitions on the same subject, including serving as an advisor, contributor, and co-presenter of the exhibition Jules Tavernier and the Elem Pomo at both the Met and the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, where the show will travel this December. She is currently working for the Dry Creek Rancheria to create a tribal museum and an archive, and is the author of the forthcoming book, From Digger's Bend to River Rock, Dry Creek Rancheria. Our second guest, Clint McKay, is a Dry Creek Pomo, Wappo, and Wintun culture bearer and a descendant of several important local culture bearers, including the late Laura Fish Summersall and the late Mabel McKay. A born naturalist with a deep understanding of plant communities and traditional methods of nurturing them, Clint is a gifted basket weaver and serves on the board of the California Indian Basket Weavers Association. He is a native speaker of the Wappo language and also speaks some Pomo and has a master's degree in Indigenous education. It is our great honor to feature Clint's work in the present exhibition at the Met. And so without further ado, I will now turn it over to Sherrie and Clint to hear more about Pomo basket making, past and present. Thank you.
I am delighted to have the chance to be able to talk with actually one of my relatives and friends, Clint McKay. Well, why don't we start with the baskets that Tavernier includes in his painting? And as kind of a springboard, one of the reasons, or the reason, that Pomo basketry is so admired is because of its technical virtuosity. So Pomo basket makers incorporate more ways of making a basket than anybody else ever has around the world and throughout time. But when you look at ways to construct a basket, if you want to sort of simplify it down, there's two sort of basic directions to go, one of which is what they call twine baskets, one of which is what they call coiled baskets. And in this painting, one of the baskets that is depicted is a coiled basket, and one of them is a twine basket. So I thought it might be nice, Clint, to start out by maybe having you talk a little bit about the difference between coiled baskets and twine baskets. And I think you might have some examples of baskets in process that you could perhaps use to help show people what that difference is.
Okay. Yes, actually, I do. And for the most part, I would say for coiled baskets, uh, we use willow rod foundations, and they're coiled in a circle. And so the foundation rods, willow rods, actually coil up on top of one another and go in a circular motion, in a circular direction. Here is an example of a 3-rod coiled basket that I'm working on right now. And so you'll see when the basket sets this way, we actually take our weaving material, whether it be sedge, and I'm using sedge and bulrush in this particular basket. And so these coils lay flat and they go around the basket this way, and we weave our material over the top of them. And and so we just coil around. We always coil to the left, and
Mhm.
and the basket builds up that way.
You can almost say in coil baskets, the foundation is almost horizontal, if you want to look at it that way, the direction it's going.
So here's here's an example of what you get it over here, I guess, of what we call a thousand stick twined basket. And it might not look like there's a thousand sticks in this basket, but trust me, when you're cleaning them and preparing them, by the time you complete the basket, you're positive there's at least 1,000 sticks in them. But anyway, we still use that same willow rod foundation, but instead of horizontal this time, for our twine baskets, that foundation goes vertical, so it goes up, and then we twine our material. In this case, I'm using sedge again, but the design element here is red bud. Most of the time in our coiled baskets, we use red bud for the design element. Not very often do we use bulrush for that. But anyway, and then we have our weavers here, and so we don't coil around. We actually twine in between each of these willow spokes is what I call
Mhm.
them. So
And that's a great kind of visual picture because they really are like spokes on a bicycle tire. Um, when you start out and they're just all splayed out like that. And then at some point, I always think one of the challenges of twining is making the shape. So taking that, kind of flat, sort of radiating spokes and having to kind of pull them in and shape them into the finished product. So, is that in your experience that basket that Tavernier has painted is this beautiful kind of bell shape, kind of not quite conical, but it has this sort of swell to it. That's difficult to do, isn't it? To get that sort of perfect shape.
um, yes, it is. Obviously, the more you do it, I don't know that it ever becomes any easier, but you learn tricks to help it be not quite so difficult. Uh, but yes, getting that shape, because like you're saying, it isn't just a, it is a bell shape, so it's not just like something that radiates out and comes up diagonal. It actually comes
Mhm.
out, comes back in, and then out again at the top. And no, that is not easy to accomplish that and have it come out looking the way you would hope it would.
I remember grandma used to always tell me, she used to say, you can't go to the store and buy the material. It's not um, embroidery thread, for example, or knitting yarn that, you can just pick up. And And she used to say, because they're all native plants, of course, that you have to go harvest, and you have to go harvest at the right time and know where they are. But she used to always say, too, the other part of it is you can't just go out into the forest and uh, find them either. That you have to work with your plants to be able to get good quality material. You have to essentially garden your plants so that they produce it for you. You get nice long roots and thin, regular sized long shoots to be able to work with.
Yeah, I obviously I could not agree more. And one of the things that we're very fortunate to have is an ongoing intergenerational relationship with a lot of the plant communities where we gather our basketry today, our materials. And so it's really special to me. And I do fully realize and understand how blessed I am to carry on those relationships with the same plant communities that, Auntie Laura, Auntie
Mhm.
Mabel, your grandma, all of my ancestors, and all of my old people, we're still tending some of those same gardens and those same plant communities today.
It allows you to enjoy this ongoing relationship with home and with generations of people that have gone before you. Or when I go out and gather materials, and it's truly one of the most enjoyable uh, parts of the process, I think, especially since in our day-to-day lives tend to get so busy.
Yeah, and so when we have an opportunity to go gather these materials, it encompasses so much more than just basketry. It's a time of reflection upon our culture, on our tradition, our ancestors. It's a time of language where we speak our language and we pass that on to
Mhm.
our children and our grandchildren. We tell stories. We talk of our ancestors as if they're here, and that's one of the things that's really important to us is not to let our teachers be forgotten. And I think even to look at it and see the beauty in a basket, I get a lot of strange looks when I go look at basketry collections, and like some of the feather baskets in this exhibit are just, they are stunning.
Mhm.
When I go look at even a fully feathered basket, and the first thing I do is pick that basket up, flip it over, and I start looking at the stitching inside, and people are looking at me like, "What?" And I'm like, yeah, the outside is pretty and it's beautiful. I want to see what it looks like on the inside. I
Yes.
want to see those stitches. To me, as a weaver, that's the true beauty in it, you know. And of course, usually if that outside is beautifully feathered, the inside is as well. But I just always want to honor that and pay that respect
Yeah.
that the work and the patience and the skill that went into making that basket, again, far transcends the pretty feathers that are on the outside.
So I know that we should talk about some of your work in the exhibit, Clint. And one of the pieces that's in the exhibit is also woven by a pommel man, Bill Benson, and they're a pair of what we would call ear sticks, and they're really something that would be worn by a woman on special occasions. And so you can see in Tavernier's painting um, at least one woman, maybe two women wearing similar sorts of ear sticks. And in this case, the long white sort of incised that the part that attaches to your ear and then hangs down, that's a heron leg bone. And then you see these red discs, and those are actually little three-rod coiled basket circles with acorn woodpecker feathers woven into them. So they're really adorned with lots of precious things. But at at the base, they're a kind of basket. And do you want to talk about a little bit about what different kinds of basketry typically men and women make?
So yeah, so for my tribe, it's different, and I've you know, being out in Indian country for so long and around different weavers throughout the state and really throughout the country, I know there are a lot of different traditions. We say rules when it comes to weaving, and uh, you know, again, I've gotten some kind of double looks when people say, you know, a man made this basket. This is what you did, and because maybe in some cultures, you know, men aren't supposed to weave, or they're only supposed to weave certain types of baskets. And sometimes I find, because of the history of our people, and how the basket weaving came to be, um, people are a bit surprised that that men actually weave the same type of baskets that women do. And I hear it said sometimes, well, usually the women wove this kind, and usually the men wove this type of basket, more of a burden basket, more of a fish trap basket, baby baskets, things that took, you know, what I've heard is stronger hands and arms in order to make that material do what you need it to do. And the finer work was done by women. Um, while I guess you could say that's more common. It certainly isn't. It certainly isn't exclusive, and weavers like William Benson, um, you know, showed that. So I'm happy, and I'm very fortunate, and I know how blessed I am to have the teachers that I had, and that I am able to weave all of those different varieties of baskets. Now there are certain materials that me, as a man, uh, you know, I can't use a certain type of material, um, adornment, shall we say. But as far as techniques, no, men can weave the same baskets that women can.
But certainly men did incredible work. You know, the work of male weavers like Bill Benson and yourself show that it wasn't that um, you don't have the dexterity. And so I think it's a nice sort of pairing to look at the earrings that you made for your daughter in conjunction with the this ear sticks that Bill Benson made. If you want to talk about those, and it's like Bill Benson's ear sticks. You know, it's really a sort of an innovation, which is true of, I think, one of the hallmarks of pomo basketry is really encourages the creativity of the individual weaver.
Okay. Yeah. So what had happened was, mine and my wife's youngest daughter um, was going to be married, and she came in and asked if she could have a traditional ceremony. And I said, are you talking about just, you know, speaking our language a little bit, or are you talking about the full, you know, early days ceremony? And she said, no, we want the full ceremony. So while much of the other family was making buckskin dresses and grinding abalone shells and clam shells, and you know, trying to get everything else ready and beating belts and stuff for her, I thought that, you know, it might be nice if I did some ear ornaments for her. So we talked about what it would look like, and we talked about the ear sticks there. And um, you know, I just had this idea of how to incorporate like the clamshells for the bird bone portion. And she said, yeah, it sounded, you know, sounded good to her. And like you were talking about before, with the being able to actually see the baskets, I think I've instilled that in my children and my grandchildren as well, because she said she elected for a design basket instead of a feathered basket for the basket portion.
Mhm.
So we incorporated the clamshells for the bird bones, she got a design element basket with willow foundation, sedge root, and bulrush design. And then the quail plumes on the top, she wanted it to be like you were looking into something. So,
Hmm.
like into the basket, into what she called the future of her and her husband and her family, and looking back uh, in time, if you will. And so that's why the quail plumes in the basket that I made for her earpieces come out and are not in a circular motion like those of Bill Benson. Um, so it's kind of a personal design for what she thought she wanted and
Mhm.
what I, thought would be appropriate, and what I wanted to make. And so it was absolutely in honor and respect of our culture, our traditions, and our ancestors.
Oh, and that's a real gift of love, Clint.
Thank you.
So I would say what you see in this exhibit are kind of three different time periods in Pomo life. Um, there's a period right at the very beginning. You just see the very end of that period where Native peoples are living as they have been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, in relationship with the natural world around them. So you have a world in which everybody wove baskets, and because you use them every day, and some people were better than others, but you move from that to a time where a number of the reasons once native people are put in relationship with non-native people, one of the things that happens is their way of life totally changes. The land is taken away. They're not able to make a living the way they used to, and so you're not cooking in baskets anymore, and you're not um, you know you're not able to fish with baskets anymore, and you start to instead see a need for people to make money. You have to have money for the first time to buy food, to buy clothes, to buy these new goods. And there is a time period right around the 1880s to about the 1920s where it became a real fashionable thing on the part of non-native people to collect and display around the house uh, a lot of American Indian arts, but particularly basketry. There's baskets that are made really primarily for their visual appeal. They're made by Native people to be purchased by non Native people. And they become a source of income at a time when there's not many other sources of income available. They're generally coiled baskets, very similar to the basket that Ethel Bogus from Elem made that's in this show is really sort of an exemplar of that sort of basketry. A non-native woman would be buying these. Those were, uh, the people that were collecting. And then I would say, if you look at contemporary baskets, we're kind of back again to native people making native baskets for native purposes, um, for cultural reasons, for personal reasons. So I think we've kind of gone to this interesting arc of basketry coming back, um, and I am actually really optimistic when I look around and I see a lot of cultural revitalization going on in Pomo country, and a lot of that basketry is central to, just as it's always been central to our lives. So um, I don't know how you feel about that, Clint.
Yeah, so just to kind of um, piggyback, if you will, or just add my my thoughts. I think you're right on target with where we started and where we are now. Um, and to me, you're right. It's not about the money at this point. I think we've gotten beyond that. But it goes for me personally. It goes a lot deeper than that. It actually goes back to I don't want to say reclaiming because we never gave it up, but it goes back to sustaining our sovereignty, and that's really what it is for me. So for me to go back and make carrying baskets and make burden baskets and things like that, it's about going back to a time where our people were much more healthy and much more in touch with the earth and with our natural world. um, you know, it's just getting in touch with that earlier time. I think
Yeah.
people are really trying to sustain our sovereignty, bring it back to a place where we used to be. And um, so again, that's kind of why this contemporary thing to me, contemporary to me is trying to go back in time. It's not
Mhm.
how do we keep changing it to fit a modern world. It's like I'm trying to turn back the
Yeah.
clock. I don't want to be contemporary if it means changing materials, if it means changing techniques, if it means changing that spiritual connection that I have to the baskets, to the materials, to the land. If that's what it means to be contemporary, then I don't want to be associated with contemporary. I might be doing it in today's world, but I want to do it as traditional and as culturally appropriate as I possibly can.
Yes, and I think what's interesting today is to, realize that I mean, because I agree with you there, and I think that, one of the things I would say the older ways have to offer today's world is a different relationship with the environment around them, and I
Yes.
think I really think as a species, unless we learn how to be able to have a healthy relationship in which humans are a force to help um, tend the world, to take care of the world around them, uh,
Mhm.
and not use more than we need to help the world be healthy. Unless we can and sort of do that on a large scale, I think we might not be around too much longer. So I think basketry is and all of the relationships uh, that you have with the environment to be able to do that work it
Mhm.
is a model for today's world, an older model for today's world that is one I think the world needs. And it's good to have people that embody that hopefully can be inspiring.
And I certainly think that's true for us as Pomo people. And so, you know, while I am um, beyond honored to have been asked to participate in this exhibit, and the thought of, you know, somebody thinking that some of my work would actually be shown at the Met, um, I still really haven't come to terms with that. It still really hasn't hit home. The full magnitude of that honor and what that means and the respect that that pays, again, not so much to me, but to our people and to my
Mhm.
teachers and the ones that came before me, for them to get acknowledged and respected like this is just, and the fact that I'm able to be a part of that. And I always tell people, you know, I said, to me, Pomo basketry, our baskets are much more than an art form.
Yeah.
It's the very essence of who we are as Pomo Indian people. We make baskets. So when we come into this world, we come in a basket. When we leave this world, we go out in one. We bathe our babies in baskets. We gather our food in baskets. We hunt in baskets, fish in baskets, store our food, cook our food, eat our food, store our most precious designs. Our dances are centered with baskets. The most precious gift we can give somebody as a Pomo person besides ourselves is a basket. If we lose, if we lose this part of our tradition and our culture, just like language, I think basketry is what identifies us as Pomo people. If we lose that part of our tradition, I'm sad to say this, but I think we cease to exist as Pomo Indian people.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I always am struck by is all of that is absolutely true. And when you look at then the baskets that are used, like the gathering basket, um, they're beautiful. All of those baskets, they're not just, while they are functional, they're not just functional. I think you look at those and you see people that are surrounded by beauty and reflect that beauty in what they make and what they enjoy. So yes, it would be a great sadness for that to pass away from the world. And hopefully, what we'll do is increase it, and it will be more and more our reality. And you are
It's not.
training up. You're training up the next generations, right?
We are working very hard at that, and that's when I say, I'm a lucky father. I realize that I am truly blessed that my wife and I have three daughters, four grandchildren, three granddaughters, and one grandson that are um, that are totally involved, encased, and in love with their culture and their traditions. And I realize as young people, again, I hear stories that, you know, people reach a certain age and they kind of pull away from their culture or traditions, or they
Mhm.
want to experience something new. And we are so blessed that our family has not done that. They fully embraced their culture, the traditions, the language, basketry, and so it really is something that we do together, something that bonds our family very, very closely, very tightly. And yeah, I'm just really fortunate and really blessed to have my family embrace what it means to be Dry Creek Pomo, Wappo, and Wintun.
Well, Sherrie and Clint, I want to extend my absolute sincerest thanks for that incredibly rich and interesting conversation. Despite having, worked on this show for the past 2.5 years now, I feel like I just continue to learn so much every time I have the privilege of hearing you both speak. So, my sincerest thanks, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person next time.
Well, thank you. And I am looking forward to seeing the exhibit in person very soon.
Yes, thank you as well. It has been an honor to be able to be a part of the exhibit, and Sherrie, it's always nice when I have an opportunity to spend time with you and talk about baskets. So thank you very much.